Caleb Monroe slumped at the chipped formica table in his dim Havenport apartment, his calloused carpenter's hands cradling a cold mug of coffee, the bitter taste mirroring the ache in his chest as he stared at an eviction notice taped to the refrigerator, its stark black ink screaming 3 days past due. 2 years ago, his wife Emily's car had spun out on a dark coastal road during a brutal February storm, leaving Caleb and their 9-year-old daughter, Lily, to navigate a world fractured by grief. Their small Maine seaside town of Haven, a backdrop of weathered docks and salt-worn charm that now felt like a cage closing in. Lily sat across from him, her hazel eyes dulled by sorrow, pushing lukewarm oatmeal around her bowl, her small fingers tracing invisible patterns on the tablecloth that still held the faint lavender scent of Emily's soap, a ghost of the woman who once filled their home with laughter and lullabies. Caleb's bank account held a pitiful $23.47, barely enough for a week's groceries, let alone the rent that loomed like a tidal wave, threatening to sweep away the fragile life he was trying to rebuild for Lily, who hadn't sung a note since the funeral, her mother's old guitar gathering dust beside a box of wooden toys Caleb had carved when joy still shaped his hands. Once a master woodworker, his intricate furniture had graced Havenport's historic homes, each piece a testament to his love for crafting beauty from raw timber. But now he patched roofs and fixed fences, his hands rougher than the oak he once shaped, his dreams buried under medical bills and a veterinary assistant job that vanished when the clinic closed. Havenport itself was a paradox, yet for Caleb, every corner held memories of Emily, her smile at the fish market, her voice singing to Lily on the pier that used to hum with her mother's melodies, her withdrawal a mirror of Caleb's own struggle to keep their small family from unraveling. Late one night, after tucking Lily into bed, Caleb walked through the frost-kissed streets to the town's employment office, his boots crunching against the pavement, drawn by a job listing that had hung untouched for 6 months. Private driver, needed for distinguished client, $75,000 year, discretion essential. A salary so absurd in a town where most scraped by on minimum wage that it felt like a mirage. Whispers swirled about the employer, Eleanor Grayson, a wealthy widow who hadn't left her cliffside Hawthorne manor since her daughter's death 3 years prior. The Victorian estate, a looming relic of faded grandeur, its rusted iron gates and dark windows fueling rumors of a woman haunted by loss. Locals at the diner spoke of failed applicants, their faces pale as they left the manor, unwilling to share why they'd been turned away. Yet Caleb, with desperation clawing at his heart, scrawled his name on the application, his pen trembling, as he pictured a future where Lily could sleep without fear of losing their home, where he might afford the art supplies she'd stopped using since Emily's death. The next morning, a letter arrived, its heavy cream paper embossed with the manor's crest, summoning him for an interview. And as Caleb stood before the towering iron gates, the Atlantic wind biting through his worn flannel jacket, he felt a flicker of hope tangled with dread, wondering if this job was a lifeline or a trap. The manor loomed above, its gabled roofs and ivy-choked walls like something from a Gothic tale. The ocean's roar below a reminder of the night Emily's car met the ice, and Caleb's breath caught as he pressed the intercom, his heart pounding with the weight of a father's love and a widower's fear, unsure if he was stepping toward salvation or deeper into the shadows of Havenport's secrets. Caleb Monroe gripped the steering wheel of his rusted pickup truck as he navigated the winding cliffside road to Hawthorne Manor, the ocean's restless churn below mirroring the unease knotting his stomach, his worn flannel jacket still damp from the early morning mist that clung to Havenport like a second skin. The iron gates loomed ahead, their intricate scrolls rusted but imposing, guarding a Victorian mansion that seemed to watch him with its dark, curtained windows, the ivy snaking up its grey stone walls, whispering of secrets locked away for years. As he pressed the intercom, a crackling voice instructed him to enter, and the gates creaked open with a groan that echoed in Caleb's chest, his heart heavy with the weight of Lily's silent mornings and the $23.47 that stood between them, and homelessness. Inside, the gravel drive crunched under his tires, leading to a courtyard where a fountain stood dry, its stone cherubs stained with moss, and Caleb parked, clutching a crumpled resume that detailed a life of woodworking and odd jobs, now reduced to a plea for survival. The manor's oak doors swung open, revealing Thomas Hargrove, a butler in his late 60s, his silver hair slicked back, his black suit pressed to perfection. but his grey eyes carried a flicker of warning as he gestured Caleb inside. His voice, low, saying only, "She's expecting you. But mind your step, some things here don't take kindly to being disturbed." The foyer swallowed Caleb in its grandeur. Polished marble floors reflecting dim chandelier light. Portraits of stern-faced ancestors lining the walls, their gazes seeming to judge his scuffed boots and frayed cuffs as he followed Thomas through corridors that smelled of wax and time. They stopped at a heavy mahogany door, and Thomas knocked softly before ushering Caleb into a parlor where Eleanor Grayson sat in a habaked chair, her silver hair pulled into a tight chignon, her black dress simple yet elegant, dark sunglasses hiding her eyes even in the shadowed room. She didn't rise, only nodded slightly, her hands folded around a silver locket, and Caleb felt her presence like a tide pulling at him, distant yet powerful, her silence louder than words. Thomas handed her Caleb's resume and she scanned it without expression, her voice cool but precise as she said, "You'll start tomorrow, Mr. Monroe. Be here at 8 sharp. The car is in the garage, and discretion is non-negotiable." Caleb stammered a thank you, his mind reeling at the abruptness, but Thomas's hand on his shoulder guided him out before he could ask questions. The butler's whispered warning lingering. "She hasn't left this place in 3 years, not since her daughter Clara passed, so don't expect warmth, and don't ask about the past." Back in his truck, Caleb drove home under a sky bruised with clouds, the $75,000 salary a beacon of hope. Yet the manor's chill clung to him, making him wonder what he'd just agreed to. The next morning he returned, parking beside a pristine Rolls-Royce in a garage that smelled of polish and disuse, its odometer frozen at 4,128 miles. And Thomas handed him a handwritten note on cream stationery listing destinations: Havenport Bank, Carter Law Offices, and Elmwood Cemetery. Eleanor emerged from a side entrance at exactly 8, her movements precise but hesitant, like someone stepping onto thin ice, and she slid into the back seat without a word, the intercom crackling to life with her clipped instructions to drive. Caleb caught glimpses of her in the rearview mirror, her sunglasses reflecting the world outside, her hands clutching the locket as if it anchored her, and he wondered what loss had carved such careful distance into her posture. The bank visit was quick, an assistant bringing documents to the car, Eleanor signing them without stepping out, her signature sharp and deliberate, and at the law firm the pattern repeated, her silence a wall Caleb couldn't breach. But at Elmwood Cemetery, she exited the car, moving slowly to a granite headstone beneath an ancient willow, and Caleb watched her stand there for 23 minutes, her shoulders trembling slightly, the locket pressed to her lips as if whispering to someone long gone. He thought of Lily, how she'd stopped singing after Emily's death, how her small body curled into Emily's sweater at night, and something in Eleanor's quiet grief felt like a mirror to his own, a shared language of loss he hadn't expected. Driving back, the intercom stayed silent, but Caleb noticed Eleanor's fingers tracing the locket's edge, a nervous habit that betrayed the composure she wore like armor, and he felt a pang of curiosity about Clara, about what had locked this woman away from the world. As he dropped her off, Thomas met him at the garage, his eyes softer now, saying, "She doesn't speak much, but she notices everything. Give her time, Mr. Monroe." Caleb drove home to Lily, who was coloring with broken crayons at their kitchen table, her drawings all grays and blues, and he told her about the job, leaving out the manor's shadows, promising they'd be okay now, though his heart wasn't sure. That night, he lay awake, the ocean's distant roar blending with memories of Emily's laugh, wondering if this job was a chance to rebuild or a step into a grief as deep as his own. Caleb Monroe eased the Rolls-Royce through Havenport's fog-draped streets, the hum of the engine a steady pulse against the quiet that filled the car, his eyes flickering to the rearview mirror where Eleanor Grayson sat as she held it like a lifeline. 2 weeks into the job, Caleb had settled into the rhythm of Eleanor's handwritten notes. Each morning's itinerary: bank, law firm, cemetery delivered on crisp stationery by Thomas Hargrove, the butler's steady hands betraying none of the tremor Caleb noticed in Eleanor's when she thought no one was watching. The manor's oppressive silence had begun to feel familiar, its corridors of faded opulence and dust-covered chandeliers a stark contrast to the cramped apartment. Lily's absence lingered like a half-finished carving in Caleb's heart. He drove with care, noting how Eleanor hesitated at the car door each morning, her steps deliberate, as if crossing an invisible threshold required courage she barely possessed, and he wondered what kept her tethered to these joyless errands. Her life reduced to signatures and solitary visits to Clara's grave. One grey Tuesday, as they idled outside Carter Law offices, the intercom crackled unexpectedly, Eleanor's voice softer than usual, asking, "Your daughter, Lily, how is she? Adjusting to school this year?" Caleb's grip tightened on the wheel, surprised by the question, his mind flashing. He answered haltingly, sharing how Lily hadn't touched her mother's guitar since the accident, how her drawings had turned to smudges of grey, as if color itself hurt too much. And to his surprise, Eleanor responded, her voice carrying a warmth that pierced the car's sterile air. "Children hold their grief differently, Mr. Monroe. Sometimes they need a spark to find their way back." The words lingered as they drove to Elmwood Cemetery, where Eleanor stood longer than usual, her silhouette against the willow tree trembling as she pressed the locket to her chest, and Caleb felt a tug of recognition, seeing in her the same quiet battle he fought to keep Lily from slipping further into her own shadows. Back at the manor, Thomas met him at the garage, his eyes crinkling with something like approval, saying, "She hasn't asked anyone about their family in years. You're doing better than most." That evening Caleb found Lily at their kitchen table, her crayons abandoned, staring at a blank page, and he knelt beside her, promising things would get better, though his voice wavered. The $75,000 salary, a lifeline, but no cure for the ache in her eyes. The next day, during a drive to the bank, Eleanor spoke again through the intercom, asking about Lily's favorite colors, and Caleb, caught off guard, mentioned her love for blues and greens, colors Emily used to weave into lullabies about the sea. On Friday, after dropping Eleanor at the manor, Caleb returned home to find a package on their doorstep, wrapped in plain brown paper, containing a set of high-quality colored pencils in shades of ocean and sky, with a note in Eleanor's precise handwriting, for Lily, to help her find her colors again. Lily held the pencils with reverence, her fingers trembling as she traced their tips, whispering, "They're like the ones Mum would have picked," and for the first time in months, she sketched a wave curling toward a shore, its hues tentative, but alive. Caleb's throat tightened as he watched, a flicker of hope stirring, and he shared the moment with Eleanor the next day, thanking her through the intercom, his voice thick, saying, "Lily drew last night, first time since we lost Emily. I don't know how to repay you." Eleanor was silent for a long moment, then replied softly, "You don't repay kindness, Mr. Monroe, you just pass it forward." The exchange shifted something in Caleb, the wall of silence between them thinning, and he began to share more during their drives, telling Eleanor about his woodworking days, how he'd carve intricate patterns into cedar, each piece a story he told for Emily and Lily, a craft abandoned when grief and bills demanded practical work. Eleanor listened, her responses brief but thoughtful, and one afternoon, as they passed Havenport's community center, she mentioned Clara's love for the piano, how the manor's music room held a grand Steinway untouched since her daughter's death, its keys silent as the grave she visited weekly. Caleb sensed the weight of Clara's absence in Eleanor's voice, a mirror to his own loss, and he began to see her not as the cold heiress of local lore but as a mother carrying a wound that matched his own. Their drives grew less mechanical, Eleanor's instructions sometimes laced with questions about Lily's drawings or Caleb's past, and he noticed her hands, still clutching the locket, trembled less when she spoke, as if words were a rope pulling her back to the world. By the third week, Caleb brought a small wooden carving to the manor, simple wave, inspired by Lily's sketchhand, left it in the garage. A quiet thank you for the pencils, and when Thomas handed it to Eleanor, her lips curved in a faint smile, the first Caleb had seen. As he drove home that night, the fog lifting to reveal a star-strewn sky, Caleb felt a fragile connection forming, like a delicate grain in wood, waiting to be shaped. But he wondered how long it could last in a house built on grief and secrets. Caleb Monroe guided the Rolls-Royce, through his knuckles white on the wheel as he glanced at Eleanor Grayson's reflection in the rearview mirror. Her dark sunglasses hiding eyes he'd begun to imagine held more than cold detachment. 3 weeks into his role as her driver, the fragile trust built through shared stories of Lily's drawings and Clara's piano had woven a thread of connection. But that morning, as Caleb helped Mrs. Delgado, their elderly neighbor, carry groceries, up the creaking stairs of their apartment building, she pressed a crumpled eviction notice into his hand, her weathered face etched with fear, whispering, "They're taking my home, Caleb." After 42 years, the notice bore the logo of Grayson Properties, Eleanor's company, and her sharp signature at the bottom, a blade cutting through the warmth Caleb had begun to feel. The promise of $75,000 now tainted by the realization that the woman who gifted lily-colored pencils was dismantling lives for profit. Mrs. Delgado, who'd baked cookies for Lily and shared stories of her grandchildren, faced displacement to make way for a luxury condo development. One of 12 families on their block handed 30-day notices, their homes marked for demolition in a town where affordable rentals were as rare as sunlight in February. Eleanor sensed the shift, her posture stiffening in the back seat, her fingers pausing on the locket she always held. But she said nothing, her silence a wall Caleb no longer wanted to scale. At Elmwood Cemetery, as she stood by Clara's grave, the rain soaking her black coat, Caleb's anger simmered. The image of Mrs. Delgado's trembling hands clashing with Eleanor's composed grief, and he wondered how someone who understood loss could inflict it so carelessly. Back at the manor, he followed her to the music room, a space he'd never entered, its grand Steinway gleaming under dust sheets, sheet music scattered like leaves from Clara's unfinished songs, and Lily's wave drawing, propped on a table, after Caleb shared it yesterday, seemed out of place among the room's heavy sorrow. He set the eviction notice on the piano, his voice steady but sharp, saying, "Mrs. Delgado's lived in her home for 42 years, raised her family, buried her husband there, and your signature's tearing it all down for condos nobody here can afford." Eleanor's face paled, her sunglasses slipping to reveal eyes red-rimmed and startled, but she lifted her chin, replying, "Business isn't personal. Mr. Monroe, those properties are undervalued. This project will bring jobs, revitalize Havenport." Her words rang hollow, and Caleb's voice rose, cutting through the room's stillness. "Is that what you told Clara when she challenged your deals? That it's just business when you destroy lives?" Eleanor flinched, her hand gripping the locket, as if it could shield her, and she whispered, "Don't speak of Clara. You don't know what I've lost." Caleb gestured to the sheet music, the piano's silent keys, his anger spilling over. "She loved this room, this music, and you let it rot, just like you're letting families lose everything. Did Clara hate what you'd become? Is that why this place feels like a tomb?" The words struck like a hammer on wood, and Eleanor's composure shattered, her hand sweeping a stack of sheet music to the floor, the pages fluttering like wounded birds, her voice raw. "You think you understand loss, but you don't know what it's like to lose a child who despised you." She turned away, tears glinting behind her glasses, and Caleb felt a pang of regret but no retreat, his trust in her broken like the scattered music at their feet. He left the manor without another word, driving home through the rain, the Rolls-Royce luxury a mockery of his crumbling world. And when he told Lily they wouldn't return to the manor, her face fell, her small voice asking, "Did I do something wrong with the pencils?" Caleb held her close, his heart aching as he said, "No, sweetheart. Sometimes grown-ups make choices that hurt more than they fix," but he wondered if he meant Eleanor or himself. That night, as Lily slept, clutching Emily's sweater, Caleb stared at the eviction notice, the Grayson Properties logo, a stark reminder of the gap between Eleanor's kindness and her ruthlessness, and he questioned whether the job had been a mistake, a false hope dressed in a $75,000 promise. Mrs. Delgado's words echoed, her fear of losing the home where she'd raised 6 children, and Caleb felt powerless, his carpenter's hands useless against the machinery of wealth. The manor's music room haunted him, Clara's ghost lingering in the scattered sheets, and he realized Eleanor's grief, though real, didn't absolve her choices. Yet his own anger felt like a betrayal of the connection they'd begun to share. As Havenport's lighthouse beam swept through the night, casting fleeting light across their apartment, Caleb sat in the dark, wondering if he'd walked away from a chance to understand Eleanor's pain or protected Lily from a woman who built her empire on others' ruins. Caleb Monroe sat in the sterile glow of Havenport's hospital waiting room, his grease-stained hands clutching a paper coffee cup, the antiseptic smell mingling with fear as he stared at the double doors where Lily lay, her small body broken, after a bicycle accident on a poorly maintained road near Hawthorne Manor, the same road Eleanor Grayson had fought to keep unpaved to preserve her estate's seclusion. The call had come mid-shift at the garage where Caleb had taken a job after quitting as Eleanor's driver, his heart lurching as he raced through rain-soaked streets. the image of Lily's crumpled bike and twisted arms searing his mind. Her surgery for multiple fractures costing $9,000 he didn't have. Lily's accident, caused by a delivery truck swerving on the uneven road, felt like a cruel echo of Emily's death, and Caleb's chest tightened with guilt, wondering if staying at the manor might have kept Lily safe, away from the dangers of their struggling life. Hours ticked by, the waiting room's clock a relentless reminder of his powerlessness, until Eleanor appeared, her black coat dripping from the storm outside, her face raw with an emotion Caleb couldn't name, moving with a purpose that silenced the room's murmurs. She approached the reception desk, speaking quietly to the staff, her authority cutting through the hospital's chaos. And when she turned to Caleb, sitting beside him on the hard plastic chair, her voice was steady but soft, saying, "Lily's surgery is covered. The best orthopedic surgeon from Portland is on their way, and she'll have physical therapy as long as she needs. No bills will come to you." Caleb's exhaustion battled with disbelief, his voice rough as he asked, "Why? After everything, after I walked away, why are you here?" Eleanor's hands twisted around her locket, her sunglasses gone, revealing eyes the color of the stormy sea, and she spoke slowly, as if each word cost her. "Because I knew your wife, Emily, died on Harbor Road, a stretch I kept unlit to protect my property values, and when I saw your application, I hired you not just for a driver, but to ease the guilt that's haunted me since." The revelation hit Caleb like a wave, his mind reeling back to Emily's accident, the police report citing ice and darkness, never mentioning Grayson Properties' influence, and he realized Eleanor's kindness to pencils. The conversations had been laced with a hidden debt she was trying to repay. She continued, her voice breaking. "Clara found out about Emily's death. She dug into my business dealings, confronted me about prioritizing profit over lives, and it broke her. She'd been sober for 10 months, but the shame of my choices pushed her back to the drugs that killed her." Caleb's anger flared, mixing with the gratitude he felt for Lily's care. His words sharp. "You used us, hired me to quiet your conscience, not to help us heal." Eleanor nodded, tears tracing her cheeks, admitting, "I thought distance would protect me from facing what I'd done, but you and Lily showed me what I'd lost by hiding. Clara died hating me for the same greed that hurt your family." The hospital's hum faded as they sat, two broken souls bound by loss, and Caleb thought of Lily's wave drawing, its tentative colors a bridge between their pain, wondering if he could forgive a woman whose decisions had cost him so much. Before he could respond, a doctor emerged, her face calm, saying Lily's surgery was successful, though her recovery would be long, and Caleb followed her to Lily's room, Eleanor trailing behind, her presence a quiet plea for redemption. Lily lay pale against the white sheets, her cast-covered arm dotted with star stickers from a kind nurse, and when her eyes fluttered open, she saw Caleb and Eleanor, her voice weak but warm. "Mrs. Grayson, you came to see me." Eleanor stepped closer, smoothing Lily's hair, her touch gentle as she replied, "I came to make sure you're okay, and to promise you'll always have what you need." Lily's smile, fragile but real, pierced Caleb's heart, and she asked, "Are you okay too? You look sad," her innocence cutting through the weight of their adult failures. Eleanor glanced at Caleb, her eyes seeking permission to be honest, and she said, "Sometimes we make mistakes that hurt people we care about, and we have to work hard to fix them. I'm trying to do that now." Caleb watched, torn between resentment and the flicker of hope in Lily's gaze, and as they sat through the night, Eleanor's presence, a steady anchor, he felt the first stirrings of understanding, seeing her not as the heiress who'd wronged them, but as a mother who'd lost as much as he had. By morning, Lily slept peacefully, and Caleb and Eleanor stepped into the hospital cafeteria, their conversation raw and unfiltered, Eleanor admitting she'd spent years researching families her business had harmed, hiring Caleb as a step toward atonement, but finding in him and Lily a reason to live again. Caleb shared his own guilt, how he'd failed to protect Lily from a world that kept breaking her, and as the sun rose over Havenport, casting light through the hospital windows, he wondered if their shared pain could build something new, or if the truth of Eleanor's role in Emily's death would always stand between them. Caleb Monroe stood in the Hawthorne Manor's music room, the late November light filtering through tall windows, casting golden patterns across the polished Steinway where Clara's sheet music lay neatly stacked, no longer scattered from Eleanor, Grayson's outburst weeks ago, as he held a small wooden carving of a wave, its curve smoothed by his calloused hands, a quiet offering to the space that had become a refuge for him and Lily. The hospital vigil for Lily's recovery had softened the edges of his anger. Eleanor's confession about her role in Emily's death, a heavy truth that lingered, yet her actions covering Lily's surgery, securing the best care, had planted a seed of forgiveness. Fragile but growing, like the tentative colors in Lily's latest drawings. Eleanor had cancelled the redevelopment project, sending letters to Mrs. Delgado and the other families on their block, ensuring their homes were safe, their leases extended indefinitely at current rates, and she'd begun transforming the manor's unused spaces into a community haven, starting with this music room where Lily now sat, her casted arm propped on a cushion, teaching a younger neighbor to pluck a simple melody on the piano. Caleb watched his daughter, her hazel eyes bright with purpose, for the first time since Emily's death, her voice gentle as she guided the child, and he felt a warmth that battled the chill of their past losses. Eleanor entered quietly, her silver hair loose, her usual black attire replaced with a soft blue sweater, and she carried a tray of coffee, setting it on a table beside a framed wave drawing Lily had gifted her. The colors vibrant against the room's muted elegance, she approached Caleb, her eyes no longer hidden by sunglasses, and handed him a tube of gold paint, saying, "I read about kintsugi, the art of mending with gold. I thought we could try it with Clara's broken sheet music frame. Make something beautiful from what we broke." Caleb nodded, his hands steady as they worked together, brushing gold along the frame's cracks. The act a silent pact to heal what grief had shattered. Their movements careful, like carving wood or playing a delicate chord. Lily glanced over, smiling, and said, "It's like my stars on the cast. They make the broken parts special." Her words a bridge between their wounds, and Caleb saw Eleanor's lips curve, a softness he hadn't imagined in the woman he once saw as ruthless. Outside, the manor's gardens, once manicured by hired hands, now bloomed with community-planted vegetables and flowers. Mrs. Delgado tending a patch of marigolds she'd brought from her own yard, her gratitude evident in the tamales she shared. At weekly gatherings that turned the manor's dining room into a place of laughter and stories, Eleanor had announced her retirement from real estate, redirecting her wealth into a foundation for affordable housing and local artists, naming it after Clara, and she offered Caleb a role as the manor's caretaker, a job that let him oversee the foundation while carving again. His workshop in the estates shed alive with the scent of cedar and possibility. Lily's recovery progressed, her physical therapy funded by Eleanor, and she spent afternoons in the music room, her cast no longer slowing her as she painted a mural on the wall, a vibrant harbor scene with figures playing music, their faces glowing with hope, a testament to her belief that broken things could shine brighter when mended with care. One evening, as snow dusted Havenport's cliffs, the community gathered for a concert in the manor's garden. Eleanor at the Steinway playing Clara's favorite piece, a haunting melody that wove through the crowd, Caleb joining on a guitar he'd restrung for the occasion, and Lily humming along, her voice a soft echo of Emily's lullabies. The repaired frame, its golden cracks catching the lantern light, hung above the piano, a symbol of their shared journey, and Mrs. Delgado clapped from the front row, her marigolds a bright splash against the winter grey. As the music faded, Lily presented Eleanor with a new painting, a gift for Christmas, showing the manor's gardens in spring, impossible flowers blooming among people working together. Their hands joined in a circle of light, and Eleanor hung it in the foyer, where visitors would see it first, a reminder that the manor was no longer a fortress, but a home open to all. Caleb watched Lily teach a pottery class in the shed, her small hands guiding clay with a confidence that mirrored Emily's, and he realized the job he'd taken in desperation had led to a family forged from fragments, not of blood but of shared healing. Eleanor, now a fixture at Lily's school events, learned the names of neighbors' children, her laughter mingling with theirs, her wealth finding purpose in the scholarships she funded for music students, a tribute to Clara's unrealized dreams. As the concert ended, the three sat on the manor's terrace, the golden frame gleaming beside a bowl of garden strawberries, and Lily's laughter rang out as she taught a child to strum a chord, her joy a melody that filled the space's grief had carved. Caleb looked at Eleanor, their eyes meeting in quiet understanding, and he said, "We're not whole yet, but we're getting there, together." Eleanor nodded, her fingers tracing the frame's golden veins, replying, "Broken things find each other, and sometimes they make something new." The ocean whispered below, its rhythm a promise of spring, and Caleb knew the manor, once a place of shadows, had become a beacon of light, its gates open to a community that healed as one.